Hi, everyone. Welcome to the APA Research and Formatting Fundamentals tutorial, also known as the tutorial on how to search for academic articles, cite, and to format your ASA College Mini Paper. The goal of this tutorial is to provide you with the following information. One, we need to understand what is APA and why do we use it to cite our work. More importantly, why must we cite? Second of all, we'll review how to search for an academic article in ASA's College Online Library. Next, we'll go through Citation Fundamentals to get you familiar with some of the rules and guidelines when it comes to citing your work. In addition, we'll talk a little bit about APA paper formatting fundamentals. In other words, how to format your paper, some tips and tricks, if you will, how to ultimately create your presentation/paper. And finally, how to organize your thoughts, how to put it all together using some of the guidelines and tools that are available. So first and foremost, let's understand a little bit about APA and why we must cite. From its most simplest perspective, the way that you always want to think about it is APA is a tool that helps us to format, to reference, to cite all of our work. APA is basically a citation style that's one of the most commonly used formats for manuscripts in the social sciences. This is a format that's used in many academic settings, not just at the college level, universities, but also in a lot of the published manuscripts that are out there. You will see APA format, in this case, the American Psychological Association format, used as part of their manuscript creation process. For us, here at ASA College, we use APA to make sure that we are formatting our papers correctly, that we're providing the proper references in the right format, but more importantly, we use APA to help make sure that we are citing our references. So the question that some of you might have right now is, why do we use APA? Well, again, we use it not only because it's one of the most common formats out there for manuscript creation, but we use it to cite our sources. Why do we cite? Well, that's a great question. We cite because we are trying to give credit to the thoughts and work of an author. Why is this important? Because if you try to pass ideas as your own without a citation, this is considered to be plagiarism. It's basically stealing. You're stealing someone else's ideas and trying to pass it off as yourself or as your own ideas. More importantly, we want to make sure that when you cite, that you cite in a way that someone can go back and look and find, where did you get this quote or this idea from? We cite so we can avoid plagiarism. We cite to give credit to the author who created the ideas or the writings that we are referring to. So in essence, APA citation methods give us the means to cite and give credit to authors in our papers and writings. Now, it's important to understand, though, what constitutes plagiarism, because I think that one of the most important aspects about dealing with plagiarism is to understand some of the cases in where you may inadvertently be plagiarizing. So let's look at some illustrative examples. By the way, this is not exhaustive, but some of the common ones that you may encounter while writing your mini paper or any other written project here at ASA College. First and foremost, if you go through the process of using someone else's words without acknowledging that where this idea or concept came from, aka you went to Wikipedia, you found a journal article, you copied and pasted that information onto your paper with no citation of any kind, that's considered plagiarism. This is an important concept. You can't just copy and paste something and pass it on as your own idea. Second of all, if you take the theories or the ideas of other people, but simply rewrite them and put it into your own language, aka you paraphrase as your own words, that is also considered plagiarism if you don't give proper credit. Citations, in this case, are important because we give credit regardless of whether we have a direct quote or we take a paraphrased idea. So if you write or rewrite someone else's words, you still should give credit to the original author where that idea or concept came from. In number 3, we talk about the fact that if you use any kind of facts, statistics, even images from another source without giving them credit, that is also considered plagiarism. That means if you start quoting statistics like 33% of all students know what plagiarism is. Well, where did you get that quote from? Because that's now something very specific. And statistics, anytime you use statistics, anytime you use any kind of numbers, anytime you are stating facts, quote unquote, you must use a citation or else it could be considered plagiarism. Finally, using words or work taken from others from the internet without acknowledging the source. Yes, that includes ebooks, Wikipedia, or any other sources. You can't just copy and paste stuff and put it into your paper. You must cite it accordingly so you can avoid plagiarism. Again, plagiarism is meant to be, in this case, when one takes the words of others or the ideas of others and tries to pass them off as their own. If you pass it off as your own, this is considered cheating, which is plagiarism, which could land you in academic trouble. So what's the easiest way to avoid plagiarism? Well, whenever you are using the ideas of others, make sure that you cite. Cite for anything that you may use, that you take a direct quote from. Cite any idea that you paraphrase and put into your own words that came from someone else. Cite any statistical facts and figures that you may be using to support a key point in your discussion/document. Again, if you're not sure, cite, because again, APA provides us with the format and the style to cite, which is why we cite to begin with. And again, the other reason why we cite is to give the reader the opportunity to go back and do some research and figure out where these ideas came from. In a way they can easily figure out who wrote it, where did it come from, what's the actual reference. If they wanted to go back and look at it, they can do so. In short, make sure that you cite all the resources that you use in your academic work. More importantly, if you use a direct quote, you must cite. There's no exception to that rule. If you use a direct quote, you must cite. If you paraphrase the ideas of another author, you must still cite the source. So when in doubt, cite and cite again. In our next section, we're going to talk a little bit about how to search for an academic article in ASA's College Online Library. So in the previous section, we talked about the importance of citation, but before you can even start a citation process, you need to find some articles. And what's the easiest place, or what, better yet, where's the easiest place that you can go to find your academic articles? Because it's not just about finding any article. We want academic articles. We want peer-reviewed articles. And the way that we can do that is by accessing the contents within the ASA library. The library can be accessed on the asa.edu portal via the library section at the top of the screen, or you can use the URL https://www.asa.edu/library/. Either way, you have some options to get there. More importantly, one of the questions that some of you might be asking is, well, what if I don't know what an academic or scholarly article looks like? And what's this journal article? Why can't I just go to the internet and find an article? Well, here's the catch. Remember, when you go onto the internet, anybody can publish anything, including wrong information. So the reason why we want you to use scholarly journal articles is because scholarly journal articles report the results of original research. They went through some sort of peer review process, which allows them not only to get feedback, but someone, in this case, experts in their respective fields, who can verify this information is indeed correct. More importantly, these are articles that add on to the general body of knowledge that's out there. And the good news is we have access to peer-reviewed scholarly articles that you can access from the ASA library, specifically our EBSCOhost Academic Search Premier databases, which you can use. Now, for many of you, you may be asked to go in and search for a topic based on your mini paper. Well, the good news is you can do that by going into the EBSCOhost Academic Search Premier databases. Now, I'm going to do a demo of this in a moment, but just to give you the short version of this, if you go to the library website, one of the things that you'll want to do on the left part of the screen is to make sure that you go down, once you're in the library page, scroll down and look for databases and ebooks by subject. Click on this link, and what it will do is it'll give you a slew of links that are available. The first set of entries that you're going to get are databases and ebooks. You want to scroll down until you get to general topic resources. And one of the options that you'll see below is EBSCO Academic Search Premier. EBSCO Academic Search Premier will search for journal articles across a multitude of different multidisciplinary databases that you can use to help find your articles. Now, once you do that, you will be prompted the first time to log in with your username and password. Please keep in mind that your username is your ASA email address, and you will have to enter in your password, which, by the way, is typically your ASA email password, but note the formatting style that you see here that I've highlighted in the red box, which includes this ASA underscore and your student ID. Again, notice that it's ASA in capital letters, followed by an underscore, and your student ID. Now, if this doesn't work and you're still not able to get in, even though you made sure that you have the right case-sensitive all caps letters here, make sure that you contact library@asa.edu where they could reset your password fairly quickly. Usually takes about 24 hours or less. But again, make sure that you follow the instructions that are provided so you can get access to the database. So at this time, let's do a demonstration. I'm going to quickly stop sharing my screen so we can get to the ASA library. So here we have the ASA library. And again, I know I'm in the right place. And if I'm not sure if I'm in the right place, I can take a look at the URL on top here. It says asa.edu/library. Or I can always go to the menu on the top part of the screen and just click on library. Once I'm there, I'm going to scroll down a little bit. And remember, I want to go to the section that's called Databases and eBooks by Subject. This is usually the second entry below, where I can now click on this link and access the list of databases. Now remember, I want to access the Academic Search Premier. So one of the things that I'm going to want to do is to scroll down past General Topics and Research and go down to EBSCO Academic Search Premier. Click on EBSCO Academic Search Premier. And within a mere couple of moments, I will now get access to the EBSCOhost screen. Now, this came up for me automatically because I was already logged in. If you are not logged in, you will be prompted at this time to enter your username and password as noted on the previous slide. At this point in time, I can now begin the process of searching for my content. Let's say I am a student in the medical assisting program and I want to learn a little bit more about what articles are available to me that deal with HIPAA. And more importantly, what if I wanted to understand what articles are available to me? Now, if you are working with your professor in freshman seminar or in any of your classes, you probably will be given a list of all the different topics that you can choose from. In this example, I want to find information about privacy security of health information, or in this case, the HIPAA law. So I'm just going to go in and do a search for HIPAA law. I'm going to start with a very basic search. I'll just do a search for HIPAA. And notice that as soon as I start typing in the word HIPAA, a bunch of different options come up. In this case, I'm going to focus on the HIPAA law. So for this example, I'm just going to type the word HIPAA law and click on search. Now, a couple things are going to happen here, folks. First and foremost, I'm going to start to see a list of all of the articles that exist in the ASA College library that I can use towards this topic. So anything that had the words HIPAA law in it was pulled. More importantly, if I look very closely, I can begin to see that I have right here my search results. I'm looking at the first 10 results out of 1,170 items that appeared. I could go through this, right? Because right now what it's showing me is it's pulled up everything by relevance. What that means is that I'm pulling up whatever has the closest text to what I typed. In other words, it's not going by date. It's giving me whatever it can find right now. More importantly, I can use some options here to narrow my search down. For example, in this section on the left part of the screen where it says refine results, I can go in and say, I only want scholarly or peer-reviewed articles, which may or may not help. Sometimes when you try this refining process, it does a significant refining, sometimes not so much. In this case, it brought it down from over 1,000 entries to 462, which is great. In addition to that, I have full text selected. Full text means that I will have a PDF file that's available. Full text is something I always would recommend that you include in your searches, as well as scholarly peer-reviewed journals. In addition, I probably want to see what some of the most recent research looks like. So right now, in this case, I'm pulling everything from 1997 to 2020. Let's say I want to limit this. I could either use this little bar here at the bottom, or I can just type in everything from 2016 through 2020. I'm just going to press the Enter key on my keyboard, and that will further narrow my search down so that now I'm looking at some of the most recent articles from the last 5 years, which is more recent. And now, as you can see here, it actually shrunk it down to 146 articles. I could also, if I go through this, I could also look at certain subjects, language, geography, especially if I'm getting stuff that's not as helpful. But the point is, you have multiple different options to choose from. I could also sort by, in this case, other options besides relevance. I could look at the newest articles first. I could look at it for a specific author in alphabetical order. I could look at the oldest entries. So you have some options here. In this case, let's say I just want to see the newest articles related to HIPAA. So in this case, I have an article here, and if I look at the information, this social solidarity in healthcare, this is from the Journal of Law dealing with HIPAA. This is from September 2020 from the Journal of Law, Medicine, and Ethics. And wow, this is a great way for me to find my search, or in this case, my search criteria, which happens to be HIPAA law. I could go in and click on it so that I can review the abstract to see what this article is about. Is it relevant to my search? More importantly, I can also see some of the other search terms that might be of interest to me if I'm not finding what I'm looking for. I could see the journal article, the year, the issue, the page numbers. And then as I scroll through this, I begin to see the abstract, which gives me a brief description of what this article is about. And sometimes in some of these databases, you may see the article listed below in an HTML style that you see here, or you can also go and download the PDF. Now, the PDF is super helpful because it gives me the opportunity to actually open the article, read it, view it, and get the content that I need from it. More importantly, it gives me the opportunity to go through and download it. So I can use the download feature, and I could save it locally onto my machine. I can also create what's called a permalink. So let's say I want to go back and read this later on, because I'm not sure if it's the right article for me. I can create what's called a permalink by clicking on this permalink icon, and then it gives me this link on top that I can then select the whole thing, copy, and then I can use that link at a later date to go back and search for this article. The other thing that it allows me to do, which I find very helpful, is I can go into the citation or the cite icon, and by doing this, I can click on the cite icon, look for APA, and actually get a copy of what my reference would look like. So in this case, it gives me all the information that I'm going to need for my reference section in my paper. My only caution with this, folks, is this should be used as a guide. Copy it, paste it to save yourself some typing, but you should go back and make sure that it's in the right format, the right information is there. Sometimes everything might be all caps or it might be misspellings, but this can save you a lot of time and effort. The other thing that this also gives me some really basic information, such as the last names of the authors, as well as the year of publication, which I'm going to need for my citations in the next section. Again, how did I get to the citation section? Well, I look for my article, I have the PDF open, and then I have this little control on the right that says Cite. I just have to make sure that if I use this, notice that there's different citation types on the left. You got to look for APA. Once you find APA or the American Psychological Association, then you can copy and paste this into your Word document accordingly. Let's say you decide, this is great. I'm not really happy with this article. You can click on the research, return to research list to go back to your previous search, or just click on the back button in your browser, and you can see what other articles are available. You want to make sure that you have articles that have either HTML full text or PDF full text, because this is going to make your life a lot easier. And if you're not finding anything, well, remember, we have over 164 different 146 different articles to choose from. So I can scroll down, go to the next page, and access my content accordingly and see what other items are there. Let's say I'm not really finding a lot of things under HIPAA law. I can always go back and just do a search for HIPAA and get more options. I can also try some other keyword searches as well. The point is, folks, you have a lot of options at your disposal, and it's important for you to go in, search for your articles, and find things accordingly. Now, having said that, I'm going to go back into our presentation. And what I do strongly recommend is that at the end of the day, regardless of whatever happens with your articles, you want to make sure that you get help from the library. The librarians are there to help you. They are extremely knowledgeable about our databases and other search strategies in case you're really running into trouble, or if you and your professor have gone through a couple of different scenarios and you still can't find the articles that you want. You can always contact the library for additional help. The library is here to help you Monday through Fridays from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. They also can be reached in terms of resources and information through the asa.libanswers or libanswers.com website, or you can also email them at library@asa.edu for more help. Now, once you have your article, you have the articles that you reviewed, and you're getting ready now to write your paper, One of the things that you want to make sure that you understand is how do you cite? Because if you remember, we've already talked about the fact that you need to cite in order for you to avoid plagiarism, but you're also citing because you want to give credit to the author or authors who wrote the work or the ideas that you're going to be writing about. So we need to understand basic citation fundamentals. So now that we have our article, now that we have what we need, one of the questions that some of you might have is, what is an in-text citation? An in-text citation, or sometimes just referred to as a citation, is simply a marking in your sentence that you're going to put in that helps to show that you are giving credit to someone else. It's establishing the credibility of the writer, aka you, as someone who respects someone else's intellectual property, aka the words and ideas of others. More importantly, in-text citations help the reader to locate the cited sources on the reference page. So this way they can go back and do further research as needed. Now, as a best practice, I would strongly recommend that you look at the APA 7th edition guidelines that are found in the Purdue OWL website. This is a great resource that you can use, which we will demo towards the end of this video. And it's a great resource that you can use to find all of the different types of formatting and requirements when it comes to APA. But in short, a citation is nothing more than information that's put in a sentence that shows that this idea, this concept, this sentence originated from someone else. Now, in its most basic, simplest form, there are two types of citations. There's what's called a parenthetical and a narrative format. Now, to keep it simple, folks, the parenthetical, which is one of the ones that you'll be seeing quite often in your papers, is a citation that's included at the end of a sentence, and it usually will include, at minimum, the following two pieces of information: the last name of the author or authors and the year of publication. In this example, we have this idea that research suggests that the Purdue OWL is a good resource for students. Now, I didn't come up with it. This author Atkins came up with it based on an article that I read that was from 2018. So in order for me to give Atkins credit for this idea, I'm simply putting in parentheses at the end of the sentence, which is, by the way, this is what we call a parenthetical citation, because the citation is between two parentheses, a left and a right, as you can see here. It's the author's last name, comma, year. This tells me that when I go back into the reference section in a short while, I will look for an article from Atkins from 2018 that is being referenced in this particular statement. Notice how the period of the sentence goes after the citation. So whenever you include a parenthetical citation or a citation at the end of the sentence, make sure that you put everything in parentheses, username, or excuse me, author's last name, comma, and the year, followed by a period at the end. Now, this format works if you're simply just putting your citation at the end of the sentence. But sometimes you're going to put the citation at the beginning of the sentence, which is what we call a narrative citation. In this case, the format is a little different, but the structure is still the same. The author's last name goes first, followed by the year. But the difference is that when you put it at the beginning, aka use a narrative citation at the beginning of your sentence, you put the author's last name and the year. There is no comma, as you can see here. What you have instead is, in parentheses, is the year of publication. So to summarize very quickly, If you are going to put your citation at the beginning of the sentence, such as Atkins 2018 suggests that the Purdue OWL is a good resource for students, again, you put the author's last name. Do not include the first name. It's always the last name. Never include the first name or the first initial. Okay? But you make sure that you have the author's last name and the year in parentheses. Now, a couple things to note here. You're going to have different variations. You may have 1, 2, or 3 or many more authors, right? But regardless of the number of authors and regardless of the type of journal article, there's always 2 things that must be present, always, in your citation, no matter what. And that is the last name of the authors and the year of publication. This is a must. For example, in this case, let's look at some other ones. Jimenez, 2020, said that learning is fun. Again, this comes from a quote from an article written by Jimenez in the year 2020, and I'm putting it at the beginning of the sentence. But if I put that same citation at the end of the sentence, I would say learning is a key element of success or to success in any field. Notice that I still have my author last name and year, but this time in parentheses, followed by a period. So both of these are correct. Both of these are different ways of citing, in this case, the same author, just I could do it at the beginning of the sentence or I can do it at the end of the sentence. Either way, by doing this, I am giving credit to the ideas that were written by these authors. So let's look at a whole other example, and let's put this in the context of what you're going to be doing with your paper. Let's say we have a reference. We copied a reference from our database. In this case, it's a work from Covey from 2013, and it's the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And this is the reference. So what do we know about this reference? Well, we know who the author is. It's Covey, and we know what year publication it is, which is 2013. There's an idea that I want to give credit to. And that idea is that people can be highly effective when they put their mind to it. Okay, pretty simple. So if you look at the examples below, A, B, and C, which one of these would be a correct way of giving a proper in-text citation? In other words, which one of these is giving credit to this idea from Covey? Well, let's keep it simple, folks. It's pretty obvious. For letter A, this just has the sentence. Even though the author's name is listed here at the beginning, I don't see a year. Therefore, this is wrong. This is incorrect because remember, what are the 2 things you must always have for a citation? You must always have the author's last name and the year at minimum. If you don't have both of these, you don't have a citation in APA format. So letter A is wrong. For B, this is correct because this is the narrative format that we can use where we put the citation at the beginning of a sentence. In this case, Covey, 2013, suggests that people can be highly effective when they put their mind to it. In addition, C is also correct because in this case, we're putting the citation at the end of the sentence. But again, Covey 2013 is in parentheses followed by a period. Regardless of which one of these you're using, the key message here, folks, is you must have the author's last name and year at minimum, or else you don't have a citation, and therefore it's wrong. Now, there are some cases where you may want to give credit to an author more specifically by also including the page number. And in some works that you may read, you will see that a page number is included usually at the end of a citation or at the end of a sentence. In this particular case, it is good practice to always include the page number because it makes it much more clear to where you found this particular idea or concept. So in this example from Atkins, it says here that Atkins, research suggests that the Purdue OWL is a good resource for students. And this is from Atkins 2018, page 12. What that means to me is that if I go and pulled the article from Atkins from 2018, I know this idea is found specifically on page 12. And again, you would get this information from your article. Same thing if you use a narrative citation. The difference is that regardless of whether you use a narrative citation or a parenthetical citation, the page number always goes at the end. In this example, we have a narrative citation, aka the citations at the beginning of the sentence, Atkins 2018, that stays the same, except if you include the page number will be at the very end, as you can see here in this example. So there are some slight variations here, but the point is, it's good practice to include a page number so that you can make it easier for your reader to find the information that you're talking about. Now, there are cases where you must include page numbers. The page number must be included. And what is that condition? Well, if you are putting in a direct quote, aka you are taking the exact text from an author's work and you're putting it into your paper, you're writing that sentence verbatim, word for word, you have to put the entire thing in quotes, followed by the citation that must include a page number. So I'm going to repeat that. If you are including a direct quote, a word for word quote from another author, you must include the citation with a page number, no exception. So in this example, author, date of publication, which is the year, and the page number at the end is what you would include for parenthetical citation. So in this example, it says, as scientific knowledge advances. Now, everything that's the exact quote that I'm copying from the author is encapsulated between the two quotation marks. So here's my first quotation. Here's my second. Everything here is exactly the same, directly copied from Hung, 2018, page 503. This is important because if you don't do this, okay, if you don't do this, you could be seen as somebody who's plagiarizing. If you are copying or putting in direct quotes, you must always include a citation that also has a page number. Now, if you use a narrative style, oh, sorry guys, there we go. If you use a narrative style format, aka your citation goes at the beginning, Hong 2018 stated that, again, I'm going to take the exact words that I'm putting in directly from the other article. Everything's in quotations, as you can see here, followed by the page number at the end. So if you include a direct quote, you must also include page numbers, no exceptions. Now, the other set of guidelines is, so far I've given you some very basic examples in that there's only one author, but what happens when you have two authors? What happens if you have three or more? I'm not going to cover every single item here on this list, but what I will say is that if you have a single author, we've seen the parenthetical and narrative formats that we can use. Author last name, comma, year, author last name, year, in parentheses, right? Pretty clear. Now, if you have two authors, it's simple. If you're using a parenthetical, aka they're in parentheses, you put the last names of the two authors separated by the and symbol, aka an ampersand, comma, year. So it's still the author's last names, comma, year. The slight variation is if you're doing this as a narrative citation at the beginning of your sentence, you're still putting the two last names, but in this case, you're putting the word and, because you're writing it as part of a sentence, right? Followed by the year. Now, the one that's a little bit different is if you have three or more authors. If you have three or more authors, this is where it gets a little interesting. You'll notice that you have is the first author that's listed, followed by the letters et al. Et al is Latin for the fact that there are others. There are others who are listed as being authors in this article. And therefore, et al. Simply means that there are more authors. So whenever you have 3 or more authors, you don't have to write each author here in the citation. In the citation, you just put the name of the first authors, or in this case, the first author's last name, followed by et al., and a period and the year. Same thing if you're doing this as a narrative citation. Martin et al. 2020 said the following. Now, sometimes you may have an institution or a group that is your author and not an individual person. You would follow similar formats, just like we did for the one author. But the point is, whenever you're in doubt, refer to this table that you'll be able to go back to, and you'll always know whether or not you're having to put in multiple authors, et al., or just simply put in a single author by him or herself. So let's go through an example together. Now that we've covered all these variations. We did this example earlier, so this one will be pretty easy. We have an author, Covey, and from 2013. The idea I want to give him credit for is habits can be formed over time. So in this narrative example, it's real simple. Author last name, in parentheses the year, followed by the idea that I'm trying to give him credit for. If I include it as a parenthetical at the end, you write your sentence and you put your citation, the author's last name and year at the end of the sentence. Now, if you have 2 authors, again, same rules. If it's a narrative, you put the names of the authors, the last names of the authors in your sentence, Covey and Perez in this case, followed by the year. And if you're putting them at the end, you're still putting the last 2 names, in this case, separated by ampersand, which means and. It's the and symbol, if you will. What if you have 3 authors? Well, remember the rule. If you have 3 or more authors, you have to use et al. But in this case, I want to put in a direct quote. And here's my direct quote with the page number. So in my example, I would put in Covey et al. Why? Because I have 3 authors. Okay, in your reference section, you have to write out all the authors. But in your citation, it's always the first author's last name, followed by et al. And the year with the page number at the end if you're doing this as a narrative in-text citation. And if you're doing this as a parenthetical, AK at the end, you put your authors, Covey et al., page 13, or excuse me, this should be Covey et al. 2013, page 13 at the end. Notice how your direct citations, or excuse me, your direct quotes are in quotation marks as well. So these are just some of the different ways that you want to consider, again, formatting your paper. And if you're not sure, again, take a look at the Purdue OWL. It gives you some very good examples and very good guidelines that you can follow. So in summary, we use citations in our academic work to give credit to another person's ideas so that we can avoid plagiarism. Plagiarism can still constitute the idea of copying and pasting ideas and concepts from others and not giving them credit. So the way to do that, folks, cite and cite again. Remember, you have the option to use both narrative and parenthetical citations. And always remember that a citation must always include the author name and year. Finally, remember that page numbers should be included whenever you have a direct quote. And your direct quote must therefore be encapsulated within quotation marks. So let's talk about APA formatting fundamentals. So a couple things. Now that you've had a chance to get your articles, you have an idea of how to cite, well, I'm going to get ready to start writing my paper. What do I need to consider? Well, first and foremost, you should always consider the fact that your APA formatted papers should be double-spaced. First of all, they have to be typed, but they should be double-spaced. They should have 1-inch margins all the way around, and you should be using the standard font size anywhere from 10 to 12. In this case, using standard fonts such as Times New Roman. You can also use Arial. In some cases, as of 7th edition, you can also now use Calibri. But when in doubt, Times New Roman or Arial are perfect fonts to use. Always keep it between 10 to 12 points. And when it comes to anything that's printed, if you have to hand in a printed copy, make sure that you are using standard 8.5 by 11-inch paper. Couple things to consider when it comes to APA style formatting. Please do not use or add any fancy images or fancy formatting to your cover page or to your paper. You don't need it. You just don't. You need to make sure that you also follow all of the header guidelines for each section and title page. Meaning, make sure that you are including the page number in the right place. Make sure that you're not including any extra text. Make sure that you're not including any extra pieces of information. APA is very specific in its formatting, and you want to make sure that you're not adding extra things that can cost you points. For example, if you are working on a student version of APA, you only have at the top right part of the screen in your header section, you have the page number. That's all you have. There's nothing else. There's no text, there's nothing else. Now in professional papers, which we are not covering in this tutorial, we'll include what's called a running head. For student papers, you do not have to include any running head. It's just a page number. Below that, you include the title of your paper, which is in bold, and you have your information, including your name, the department, the university / college, the course, instructor, and date. But again, notice how there are no other pictures, there's no fancy formatting or borders of any kind. This is what your APA standard title page should look like in all of your classes. In addition, when you look at your reference section, keep in mind that you should follow a similar format. Notice how you have your reference section at the top is centered, you have your page number, and then of course you have your references. Now, the one thing that you might notice that's a little different here is that in the reference section, it's different from the paragraphs in your paper, because if you remember in your paragraphs, you indent the first line and then you start writing. In this case, it's different. It's actually reversed. The first line is going from left to right, and then as of the second line, everything else is indented. This is what we call a hanging indent, and a hanging indent is what is used specifically in the reference section. And I'm going to show you in a moment how you can actually customize this using Microsoft Word and even Google Docs. But the point I want to make here is that the reference page has a slightly different format than any of the other pages. Also note that just from a general structure perspective, your first level headers, aka the title of each section of your paper, which we call the first level header, is always centered. It's bold and it's centered. This is important because this tells me this is the first top level section. The other thing that you see here, as I noted earlier, is that when you start a new paragraph, you press the tab key on your keyboard so you can indent the first line and you just keep writing. So this is very different than what you saw on the reference page. But what's important here is that when you have your paragraphs being written, they're all double spaced. They all have all of their formatting. It's pretty simple. It's pretty straightforward. There's no extra fancy formatting or colors. Keep it simple. Now, if you're not sure how the headings work in APA, here's a style guide that's been provided from the APA Publication Manual 7th edition, where it shows you that the first heading is always going to be centered. And if you have any subsequent subheadings, they should all be flushed to the left. And as you go further down the list, some are indented, italicized. But the key message I have for you here is the main first heading for each of your sections is always going to be centered and bold. If you have questions about your headings, please make sure to check out the Purdue OWL or apa.org for more information. Now, in terms of your hanging indent, there's a simple way that you can do this. You can actually highlight the sections that you want to format and use the little triangle, or in this case, the triangle and block that's on your ruler to actually form a hanging indent. This is one of the ways that I've seen students use and format this section accordingly, but there are some other ways we can do this much more easily. So let me actually show you how this actually works and what it actually entails. So I'm just going to get out of my presentation for a moment and I'm going to jump into Microsoft Word. I have here a sample paper that I've put together for the purposes of this example. And I'm just going to go straight down to the reference section. Now sometimes what will happen, folks, when you get to the reference section, notice that your reference section is bold in this case, and you should be putting your references in alphabetical order. So I have an article here by Loftus, and I have another article here from Braun and Loftus, right? So they're in alphabetical order, but notice how I don't currently have this hanging indent. This is a problem, right? Because remember, the first sentence in the reference section should be flushed to the left like it is right now, but everything below it in that same site, in the same reference, should be indented, or it should be what we call a hanging indent. So here's how you do it. Two ways to do that. One, make sure that your ruler is visible. Notice that up here you have a triangle on top pointing down, a first line indent, and then you have this other triangle pointing up, which is a left indent. And then you have this little block at the bottom as well. If I click on the little triangle that's pointing up, after I've selected the section that I want to move, and I just, be careful, don't click on the block, click on the triangle only. There you go. And just move it over 5 spaces or count the dots above. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And lo and behold, I now have a hanging indent. Let's do that again one more time. I'm going to have my Loftus article, go to the bottom triangle, move it over 5 spaces, and lo and behold, I now have my hanging indent. Again, you only have to do this for the reference section. Now, let's just say you're having some problems with the ruler, because this is the ruler feature that I just showed you. You can do this in Microsoft Word, you can do this in Google Docs or any other Word document, but let's say you're having some trouble. In Microsoft Word, if you go and you highlight the entire reference section, and if you look for the paragraph section in your toolbar, in addition to having your center, left, and right justification buttons, you notice that under paragraph, I have this little button here with a little arrow. This is called the launcher. If I click on the launcher, which is also known as the paragraph settings in this example, I have an indentation section. All I have to do is go to the special section, which usually will be defaulted to the word none. Click on the drop-down box and just choose the word hanging, which automatically puts it to 0.5, which is what I want. I don't have to do anything else. Just choose hanging under special and click OK. And it automatically will put my reference section in the right format. Let me do that again one more time just to show you. Highlight all of your references in the reference section. In your Home tab, under the paragraph section, click on this little launcher button, aka the button with the little arrow pointing down. You'll be brought to the Indents and Spacings tab, go to the Special section, click on the drop-down box and choose Hanging, click OK, and it automatically will have the paper properly formatted, or excuse me, the reference section properly formatted accordingly. Pretty slick, huh? But when in doubt, you can always play around with the little arrows up here in your ruler to help you manually do it as well. So you have some options to work with, folks. Finally, let's put it all together, folks, because one of the things that you need to consider is, how do you put this all together? Well, as long as you're following the anatomy of a research article and you have all the appropriate sections, you will be able to organize your paper accordingly. Now, these are the standard sections of an APA paper. This is what you want to use. This is going to help you in organizing your mini paper or any paper that you're writing. There's always a title page, an abstract, followed by the contents that make up the body of your paper, aka the bulk of your paper, which is the introduction. What are we about to read? What are we about to learn in this paper? The methods, what methods were used in the articles that you're researching. All academically sound and peer-reviewed articles always include their methods and results, so you can get that information directly from your articles, as well as the discussion about, what did you learn? What did the results tell us? What future studies and future areas of opportunity are there to learn more about this topic? Followed by, ultimately, your reference section at the very end. So let's go back to the paper. Oh, we want to go back to that. We want to go back to the actual paper. I'm going to go back to the sample paper just to give you an idea of what this looks like. So again, remember, we have our paper. We have here our example. In this case, page number on the top right with no other extra formatting. We have our title page. We have our abstract, its own page. Starting on page 3, we have our introduction. Notice how you have your first level header, which is centered, and everything else is normally double spaced. You have your citations here in your article, which is wonderful. We have the next section, which is also using a top level header. I could see we have some other citations that are going on here, Braun and Loftus. Notice how the paragraphs are all properly indented. This shows me a clear break between this paragraph and this paragraph, because that indentation tells me this is the beginning of a new paragraph. I have my results, my discussion, again, and then followed by the reference section. So if you follow the format that we've provided you, you will be able to put all these pieces together, folks. But again, you have to put this together in a structured way. If you are doing this right, I'm just going to go back to the previous slide for a moment. If you're using this structure, you will be able to put your paper together. The biggest challenge I think that any student is going to face is when you first look at this, this seems very daunting. But again, if you follow these formats, these are your headers right here. You can simply put your headers together, put your paper together fairly quickly, and begin to explain what you're reading. More importantly, if you are in doubt and you're not really sure where to begin, talk to your instructor. Talk to the folks at the Learning Center. There's a lot of places where you can get guidance that will help you in getting things as quickly put together as possible. Either way, if you have any particular questions, first and foremost, thank you for attending this webinar. Second of all, we have some resources we just want to remind you of. You can always check out the resources available at ASA College, but make sure that you also take a look at the Learning Center. We also have additional resources and support that you can access from the library as well. Always reach out to your instructor and let them know if you have any questions. We're here to help you. Thanks again, and enjoy the rest of your day.